All right, hello everybody. This is just a moment of testing here to see if everybody can hear me. If anybody gets on the chat, just say a quick hello and we hear you. Just going to do a little guitar test here. So let me know if you're hearing the guitar and if you're hearing my voice. I'll give you a little bit of background about what this lesson is going to be about before I actually kick into it and start off, just to give people some time to get on the live stream and catch up on everything. One thing, a lot of guitar players, when we first start learning and we start talking about improvisation, oh, there's Jeff. Hey, Jeff. When we start talking about improvisation, we start thinking about the pentatonic scale. That's usually the go-to scale, that books and schools and videos and everything else teaches you. And then we sort of get into this exotic world of scales that you can only use once a year if you happen to be playing over an Egyptian song on a Wednesday. Great scales, not perhaps the most useful on a day-to-day basis. So what I did was take a look at the major scale. And the thing about the major scale is it's the foundation of chords that we play on the guitar. It's the foundation of songs that we play that are built from the chords, right? So doesn't it stand to reason that if you're going to choose a scale to improvise with over the top of these chords and songs, you should choose the scale that the chords and the songs are built from, hence the major scale. Now, I have a brand new course that just came out for TrueFire, and it's called Melodic Soloing Major Scale. It sort of, does what it says on the tin. If you read the label there, oh, it's melodic soloing with a major scale. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that today and give you some examples. There's going to be 2 PDFs that you can grab underneath the lesson, and there's going to be an MP3 for you to jam along to as well, okay? Let me just say a quick hello to all the TrueFire people, Jeff, Ali, Brad, Ren, Tommy, Zach, anyone else I forgot. And hello to any fellow TrueFire teachers out there. And hello, I see a bunch of friends already on here, so hello everyone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spend the first 25-30 minutes here giving you a lesson, and then I'm opening it up to questions. So at that point, I want you to get on the chat window and just fire away. And you can ask a question based on what I'm talking about in this lesson, or you can just ask me anything. I mean, it probably needs to pertain to music and the guitar. I haven't got any stock tips. Obviously, I play guitar for a living. All right. So let's talk about the major scale. We're going to take the key of E. Okay, and the notes in the E major scale are E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. Okay, that's your E major scale, 7-note scale. Now we're going to apply this musically to a song or a jam. This is the jam track that comes with this lesson. And let's first take a look at the chords that are in the jam. Anytime you play over a jam track, you want to take a look at what the chords are. You don't just want to go, oh, okay, I think this is this scale. You want to actually think about what the chords are. Because as you develop and you get into things like chord tones, which is, a way to really play melodically, you want to know what the chords are. So the chords to this jam are basically E, C sharp minor 7, F sharp minor 9, and B7. Now, if we break that down to just simple triads, that's just E, C sharp minor, F sharp minor, and then B. Okay, so I'm going to play the jam track here so you can hear it. As our E chord, C sharp minor, F sharp minor, and then B. So E, C sharp minor, F sharp minor, 7 or 9, B7, B13. So that's the chords we're going to be playing over. Now, if you're looking at the way I'm playing those chords and you're going, how's he doing that then? well, first of all, why are you talking out loud to yourself? Makes you sound crazy. But other than that, I'm just basically playing caged variations of those chords. And as luck would have it, if you've always wanted to play pretty little chord voicings, I have another course for TrueFire. I mean, what are the chances? Called Chord Navigator Caged Triads. And my courses are on sale today because we're doing this. So be sure to check that one out as well. That's 2 plugs in 5 minutes. I've got to stop doing that. Okay, I'll really try and slow that down a little bit. Anyway, so those are our chords, okay? E, C sharp minor, F sharp minor, B7. And in the key of E, that is a 1 chord, a 6 chord, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, C sharp, a 2 chord, F sharp minor, 1, 2, and then a 5 chord, B. Right? So it's important to know what the progression is in terms of the key as well. A 1, 6, 2, 5 in the key of E. Okay, so now if you just listen to this this track again, and I play just the notes of the E major scale, right? That's not a bad note. I mean, like you would really have to go some to find a bad note in there, okay? So all of the notes of the scale work perfectly against all 4 of those chords, and it makes sense because those chords are created from notes in the scale, all right? It's diatonic, which is a great word to say to waiters, by the way. So now we know that, let's get to work. If you look at the first of the 2 PDFs, there it is, see that? Yeah. You will see 1 octave E major scale patterns. And here's what we're going to do. We're just going to take an E note on the neck, and we're not going to use open strings, because what we want to do here is find some patterns, major scale shapes that we can move from key to key effortlessly, if I can say it, and not use open strings. So this enables us to keep the same pattern going, move it around, make melodies with it, and you're going to see there's all kinds of other things we can see inside these shapes. So step 1, find an E note on the neck. I'm going to take this 2nd fret on the D string, the note E, play a 1 octave E major scale. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. Just seeing if you were paying attention there. So, as an E major scale. Now you might think, well, that doesn't sound very exciting. It just sounds like, you know, the first thing we sing as kids. It is, but you could take just a couple of notes of that, put it over those chords, and you probably come up with something quite melodic as a solo. Case in point. There we go. Let's do it again. So everything I played there was the E major scale. Now you're probably going, well, it didn't sound like this. And you'd be right, which is phrasing, which we're going to talk about in a minute, okay? So basically the idea is find your 1 octave scale, okay, and then just put the track on and try to make a melody with it. And the beauty of this is you don't have to think about what those chords are. You don't have to think, wait a minute, when's the F sharp minor coming up? I mean, you can think like that. And with my students, I'm a big fan of chord tones. So that's something we would work on down the line. But for now, what we're trying to do is get to the quickest point of making music, because that's really what we're doing here, right? As quickly as possible. So you take the 1 scale, throw that backing track on, get it under your fingers, and try and make melodies with it. And it's really, really fun as well, which is the main thing, you know. Now, once you see where that scale is, you've got to find the other E or some other E notes on the neck and try to run 1 octave scales from those patterns as well. So let's take another one. How about we go to the 7th fret on the A string with the pinky? Okay, now, often when you grow up thinking, well, you have to start your scale on the 1st or the 2nd fingers. This is another one of those sort of old wives' tales. You don't have to do that. So start the scale on the pinky there, E major scale, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, C sharp, B even, C sharp, D sharp, E. Okay, there's your scale. Now put the track on, do the exact same thing, try and make a melody in that same spot, you know. You know, and on it goes, right? So you can't hit a bad note. This is my point, okay? So there's an E, and there's the major scale. Now, what if we start that same E on the A string 7th fret on the 2nd finger, and we ascend from there? E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. And again, these are all on the PDF, right? They are all on the PDF, but I do encourage you to actually, you know, if I had $1, learning the notes on the neck is one of the most important things you can do. If you just get that down, okay? Get that down. There's really no excuse now. Come on, you've been playing guitar for 47 years. You need to know the notes on the neck, right? And there's a million ways to do that. You know, I like this idea of just naming a random note and trying to play the same note on all 6 strings every time you pick up the guitar. It's a good way to do it, you know. But anyway, so you probably know this pattern. That's really the first way we learn the major scale. So that would be the E major scale, 1 octave from the 7th fret on the A string, starting with the 2nd finger. Okay, now look where it ends. Obviously, it's going to end on E because the scale always goes E to E. So now on the G string and the 9th fret, I'm going to start there with my index finger and play the scale from there. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. You know, same thing. For those that are just joining us, basically what I'm saying is learn the E major scale. You know, grab a 1 octave pattern anywhere on the neck. You can refer to the PDF, or better yet, do it from working it out, what the notes are on the neck, and then just make a melody over this 4-chord jam track, you know. Right, so anyway, you get the point. So that's step 1. That's the way to practice, you know, getting the scale down and then trying to play it in 1 octave patterns, all right? Spend some time doing that. Now, I use 5 shapes of the major scale. I love this method. It's so simple, and it opens up the whole neck. And here's the way I think about it. So let's just take one of these positions. Let's take the first one I did, right, which was the E note root on the 2nd fret of the D string. There's my 1 octave pattern. Now, I think about the major scale the way it looks on a piano, and you have a range above that and a range below that. So that's really just the way I think about it on the guitar, okay? So I know I can go, and then above that, in the same position, I can go and grab F sharp, G sharp, and A, okay, ascending above my scale. Now, I can also go below the scale and work down. Now, I wouldn't use the low E because I'm trying not to use open strings for the demonstration, but just in terms of hearing it resolve to E as we're in E major, you could do that. So I look at the guitar and I go, what is the lowest note I can play in the key of E E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, without using open strings? And the answer is F sharp, okay, on the 2nd fret of the low E string. So if I run F sharp upwards using just the notes of the E major scale, there's my E. So F sharp, G sharp, A, next string, B, C sharp, next string, D sharp, E, and then carry on. And then if I want to go above that, I can. Okay, now if you refer to PDF 2, I love this part. It's just like a cooking show. Here are my muffins that I worked on earlier. No, if you, sorry about that. If you if you look at PDF 2, you'll see that shape I just played is right at the top. Okay, and I'm referring to that shape as shape 2. And the reason I'm calling it shape 2 is that it starts from the 2nd note of the E major scale. E, F sharp, 1, 2, right? So that's it, shape 2. If I was in the key of A major, shape 2 would start on a B because it would be A, B, okay? Now, this part that I'm talking about, you know, I'm working through quickly, and as I said earlier, if you check out the new course, what's it called? Melodic Soloing Major Scale. I go through this in a lot of detail, really, really slowly. So, you know, you can only do so much in 25, 30 minutes here, but I want to get you playing music. That's the most exciting part of this, okay? So take it from me, shape 2 starts on the 2nd note of the key, and this is just the notes of the E major scale. In that position, okay? And then, so now you have this great big 2-octave shape that you can make music with, okay? So if we go back to the jam, let's see if we can make some music with this shape, okay? Let's take something simpler. Just that. Repeat. Resolve. Variation. Now that sounded like some sort of crazy complicated run, right? No, I was literally just running up the scale, you know, literally just running up the major scale. And so now you get into phrasing tips, okay? So we have our scale, we know our chords are all from the key of E major, and I'm just playing 3 notes here, right? I mean, I'm just making this stuff as I go along in terms of what I'm playing, but that's the point, to show you that you can just kind of grab this from anywhere, right? So I played, let's see what I played. What did I play? I played D sharp, E, B. That was the start of my melody, right? Now, instead of just playing it straight, though, I did that thing I just did there again without realizing, which is a slur from above into the note, right? And this is where it becomes important. This is what stops it sounding like you're playing like that, okay? The important thing is the touch and the dynamics and the rhythm of the notes you choose, even if you're just playing 3 notes. So now this B note, you could even bend into it from a half step below, because my whole philosophy in life is, if it's good enough for Jeff Beck, the governor, then it's good enough for us, mere mortals, right? Right? You can hear it. To me, that's more interesting than going, I really like the way because just for a split second there, it's in the wrong key, and then it bends in and resolves. So I'm just doing a half step bend from the 3rd fret to the 4th fret on the G string. I could bend the D sharp to the E. You know, so many different ways to do it. I think I did a hammer-on thingy, that's a technical term, on the high E string, which almost sounds like a bagpipe now. Which is just taking the open E string because it's in the key of E and playing F sharp and G sharp. So, you know, be aware of, just take 3 notes over a track like this and see how many different ways you can play those 3 notes, because you're still using the major scale. That's where the melody is coming from. You know, for those of you that are joining us late, you probably grew up playing pentatonic, you know, and you could play E major pentatonic on this, but you don't have the 4th and the 7th. Those are the 2 notes that are omitted from the major pentatonic. And that's just 2 more notes that you can make really, really nice melodies with if you use the whole scale, okay? So be aware of phrasing ideas like half-step bends, whole-step bends, even bending from a note that's not in the scale, slurring, sliding, adding vibrato with the bar, with your fingers, different kinds of vibrato, using a hammer-on or a pull-off. You know, so many different ways to express yourself, you know, like, are you just going to bend straight to that note? Or are you going to go, you know, is it going to take you a while to get there, you know? So many different things to do with that. Really be aware of your rhythm. Like, again, just those same 3 notes. All right, that's one way of doing it. Right, now, I always reference saxophone players when I'm thinking about rhythm. I listen to a lot of saxophone players, especially guys like Michael Brecker, Chris Potter. You know, these are guys that have such a great range on the instrument, but they often use rhythm in a different way to the way we guitar players tend to do it. It's not unusual to hear a saxophone player saying on one note, you know, and soloing on one note, locking into the groove of whatever the track is, letting the momentum kind of build and then resolving off of that note. So another phrasing tip to keep in mind, when you're playing, don't feel that you have to immediately move off of whatever note you're playing, you know. Take 1 or 2 notes and experiment with the rhythm between those notes, you know. Stay on one note, move between them. Really take a moment and listen to what the drums and the bass are doing, you know, and if there's another instrument, keyboard or rhythm guitar, listen to where that's all sitting and think about what you want to say with your solo, because often just playing a couple of notes but placing them rhythmically in an interesting place can really cut through and make something happen. That can be more impressive than, you know, than a super fast run or something as well, okay? So just to recap, take your E major scale, play the 1 octave, look at the range above and below it, and then solo over the track, okay? Be aware of phrasing ideas, and one thing that's really important, stay inside that shape. Like if you hear this, for example, well, you've already moved out of the shape, but that note I ended up on is inside the shape still. So it's very important to get this correlation between your ear and your fingers, okay? There's nothing wrong with hearing this note, but try to practice this staying in one shape at a time, because that's really going to let you hear where the range is of what you could play. And then, of course, you can combine shapes and move around, okay? So that's shape 2, only called shape 2 because it starts on the 2nd note of the key, just in terms of the fingering, okay? Now, let's look at shape 3 and shape 5, all right? So the 3rd note of E major, E, F sharp, G sharp, starts on a G sharp, right? This is one of my favorite major scale shapes because it enables this three notes per string kind of idea. So you can do all your Alan Holdsworth, Eddie Van Halen kind of runs because it's great. It just sort of sits under your fingers for that. So we're starting from G sharp now. G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, and so on, right? Again, it's on the PDF. It's the middle one here, right? Shape 3, okay? You can grab the PDF under the lesson. So shape 3 is awesome. Gives you a lovely range to play with, really finger friendly. Definitely, in my opinion, the most finger friendly of these major scale shapes, okay? And you just repeat the same exercise. Put the track on, you know, get the shape under your fingers, try to make some melodies. It's really fun. It's really fun to play in a shape like that and just have that nice range against the track. Now, let me say one other thing here. So this is called shape 3 because it starts from the 3rd note of the key of E major. I also want to tie this together with a couple of really important things. Inside this shape, you can very easily access the pentatonic scale. Now, if you want to think of it as E major pentatonic, or my girl, as it's more commonly known, if you want to think of it as E major pentatonic, it's right inside that major scale shape. It's just 5 notes instead of 7, right? You can also access the minor, the relative minor pentatonic, right? If you're in C sharp minor. You can also access the caged chord shapes. Each, I'm going to say it's really slowly because this one's important. Each of the 5 major scale shapes that I talk about in my course, 3 of which I'm talking about here, each of these 5 major scale shapes correlate with the 5 pentatonic shapes and the 5 caged chord shapes. So shape 3 major scale correlates with the C caged shape for an E chord, right? There's an E chord. E, G sharp, B. E, G sharp, B. So it all lines up. And just to have a philosophical rant for a moment, you could spend a lot of time getting lost in modes and exotic scales and all this kind of stuff. But in my experience, I've been doing this quite a long time, if you have the 5 major scale shapes down cold, and I do mean cold, right? The 5 pentatonic shapes, which you probably already have, and the 5 cage shapes, and you can see the 3 of them on the neck, it opens up the guitar like nothing I've seen before. That's my personal opinion on this. There's lots of different ways to get to the same point, but this is a really effective way of doing it, okay? I'm just going to say that. And if you think about it, if you really took one of these major scale shapes and you just worked on it for 1 week only, okay, and you probably already know this one, shape 1. But even if you don't, right, 1 shape a week, 5 weeks is all it would take, and you would have that down, right, for the rest of your natural born life. That's all I'm going to say on that. It's up to you. Anyway, so shape 3 is great. It also contains a sort of B.B. King kind of blues box there as well. And then we have shape 5, which starts on the 5th note of the key, E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B. Okay, here's a B. That's shape 5, right? Again, look at the PDF. The 3rd one is shape 5, okay? And all you got to do, go back to the track, try to make melodies, find some nice half-step bends. G sharp to E is a lovely bend. G sharp to A. Now, another thing you could do phrasing-wise is don't always think about running through the scale, you know, one string at a time. This is something guitar players could learn from piano players and, again, saxophone players. What about skipping intervals, skipping strings? You know, let's make something up. Yeah, let's see what that sounds like against the track, right? So I'm playing the A string, and the G string, and the E string, and the B string, right? Instead of this, I'm gonna jump around. All right, let's see. On the one chord. Sounds like a theme. So string skipping, another great way to use this scale in a musical way that's interesting. You know, you can learn the scale overlapping an interval like thirds. And then use that in your solo. You know, perhaps not that much, but you could just use a little fragment of it and play rhythmically with thirds. You know, so many different ways to basically take the major scale, stop it sounding like this. You know, half-step bends are so emotive. You know, think Larry Carlton, you know, David Gilmour, all these great players that are just known for very expressive vibrato and phrasing. Major scale, half-step bends. You know, funny thing, when I was a kid, I was really, really into Gary Moore, still am, and I would hear him do these phenomenal runs, really fast runs, and I was like, what is that? And for years, I thought some of these rock players had access to these exotic scales that I didn't know about. And when I finally got to the point where I could hear what was going on, a lot of it's just overlapping the major scale. So I was quite surprised. Like, oh, that was the first ever scale I played on the guitar. You know, so there you go. All right, so let me just recap this, and then I'm going to turn it over for some questions. What I'm talking about is basically based on my new TrueFire course, which is melodic soloing major scale. And the concept is you take the major scale, you see it across the neck in 5 shapes that line up with the 5 pentatonic shapes and the 5 cage shapes, and then you just make melodies inside the shapes, and then you start to connect them, you know, and so that way you can solo going this way as well as this way, you know, because the idea is not to have you locked in a shape like some castle in Lord of the Rings. Yeah, the idea is to have you be able to move, you know, up and down. You know, if you're in this shape, you want to be able to go this way as well as this way, you know. And then once you do that and you have those shapes down, and you can think in terms of where chord tones are, you can think in terms of where cage chords are. It opens up the whole world of guitar, in my opinion. But for you, if you haven't used this scale to improvise anymore, basically just take the 1 octave patterns on the first PDF, okay, and play those and improvise over the track with those, and then extend the range with the second PDF, and you're playing the major scale in 2 octave patterns all over the net. But even though, you know, PDFs are great and all that kind of thing, I like people to know what the notes are in the scale, because then it really, really opens up the guitar for you, and jam along with the MP3 track that's included with this lesson. All right, I'm going to have a look at some questions now. Let me have a look back here. And if anyone has any questions about all of that stuff I just said or anything else, then let me know. I see a lot of friends on here. Excellent. Great to see everybody here. Somebody said, is this Dorian? No, this is not Dorian. When I was playing this shape 2 of the major scale, that is the same fingering as the Dorian mode, but I would need to be playing out of a tonal center of an F sharp minor chord. You know, I don't want to go down the modes rabbit hole, really. The last lesson, actually the last one of these lessons that I did, the last live lesson, which you can find on TrueFire Live, was about the Lydian mode, and I talked all about that, about modes. But essentially, even though the fingering may be the same and the notes are the same, because the chords we're playing over here have a tonal center of E major, you know, you can hear that E is the one there, right? Then you're not really playing Dorian. You'd only be playing Dorian if you were playing over a song where F sharp minor was the tonal bass. Okay, I hope that makes sense. I don't want to confuse anyone with modes, but it's all about what chords you're playing over. And in the context of our jam here, this is a 1, 6, 2, 5 chord progression in a key of E major. So E is home. Okay, let me see what else somebody says. Can you apply the shapes to any key depending on where the root is? Absolutely, absolutely. So you could think of this in several different ways. Let's just take the key of C, okay? Now, the way I do it is you could look through and see it's a longer process if you do the 1 octave scale patterns first. If you find all the C's, etc., right? That's going to take you a little while to then extend the range. If you know your 2 octave shape and you know the notes of the key, now C is a great key to start with practicing because there's no sharps or flats, right? So you could say, okay, what is the lowest note here I could play this shape with without using open strings? And the answer is shape 5, which starts on a G. Now you could also do this visual. I tend to use the cage chord shapes for everything. So I see that C chord right there, which is an A cage shape. And I know that that's shape 5 of the major scale. So my 1 octave, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. My 2 octave, I'm going to start from G here. I also notice this pentatonic shape because the 3 are sort of locked together for me, which is very helpful when you do this, you know. But yeah, so you can move the when you say move the root around, you can move the root of each 1 octave major scale around, but it's easier because the shapes are always in the same order, right? So if you know the notes on the neck, you know this is C, so this is going to be shape 1, shape 2, and so on. And here's shape 5. So there's different ways to do it, and I'm certainly don't. You know, I never say to my students, you have to do it this way. You know, to me, some people love the visual of seeing a chord shape. Some people have a very sort of engineer style mind and they like to think, okay, it's the 5th degree of C major, so I'm going to start on a G because it's shape 5. You know, other people can see the C 1 octave pattern, you know, so it's really what works best for you. But if you're aware of the different methods and you know the notes on the neck, then you can get it really quickly. I've seen it time and time again. And it's a really nice feeling, actually, from a teacher's point of view, to see somebody that's kind of been locked in that pentatonic prison, so to speak, and then these 2 extra notes just really open up the melodic range. It's pretty cool. Let me see what else we have here. You use a lot of the cage system. Why do you prefer saying shape 2 instead of shape D? Okay, well I think I just sort of answered that right there. Yeah, because if I start talking about this like this is the A shape major scale, then if you're not aware of the cage system, you're going to have no idea what I'm talking about. Whereas if I say it is shape 5, right, and C, D, E, F, G, the 5th note, and you can even if that's a little confusing to you, you can certainly see this 1 octave C major scale and then think, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. G is the 5th note, so the range above and below the scale would start on this G right here. See, so it's trying to find the easiest way for somebody, because everybody comes at the instrument. All the students I meet have different amounts of knowledge, you know, and so it's trying to find the easiest way for them to make sense of it and the quickest route for them to be making music, because that's what this is all about, you know. Certainly not about learning scales, you know. Having said that, though, you do also have 5 of the 7 modal shapes with this as well, which is rather a nice bonus, you know. Let's see what else we have here. How do you get out of hitting a wrong or a bad note? Okay, but that's a great question. Miles Davis has said this, Charlie Parker, a lot of other people. You've probably heard it before. There are no wrong notes, okay? And you go, oh yeah, but come on, that can't be really true. Let's take this jam and I'll demonstrate. So we're back in E, right? So let's take this note right here. It's not the most pleasing sound, right? But if I go, so I used it twice, and I don't think it really stood out, right? Because I used it as a passing note. I used it to get from that to that. And the second time I slurred it. I tried to. And so with that in mind, you know, you can do that. Now, I love tension in music. I like the so-called bad notes quite a lot. You know, it's a misspent youth. But you can always make something happen. I think Jeff Beck actually once said that you're a half step away from a good note, and if your ear is good enough, you can very quickly bend to a half step. So think chromatic passing tones. You know, this might not be a great note against the chord, but I'm going to step over it and through it to make something musical happen on the other side. I'm a half step away. I can always bend that note. You know, the old trick of pretending you meant to play it, applying rhythm to it. There are ways to get around it, you know. But and the other thing, more philosophical, is the real answer to that is, so what? You know, there's a great book, Kenny Werner's Effortless Mastery, and it talks about this. And as musicians, especially musicians that are improvising, we get caught up in this mindset, this trap of, oh my goodness, if I play the wrong note, what's going to happen? Well, you know what? Nothing's going to happen. Chances are 80% of the audience won't even notice, you know, and, you know, it's not brain surgery. You don't have somebody's life in your hands. You know, you maybe played a sharp 5 against a root, you know, life will go on. So I think wrong notes don't matter is the first thing, and then try to make something happen out of them that's creative. It's all about the way you look at it, I think, you know. Let's see. So Dorian would be over an F sharp minor to the notes of the E major scale. Yes, that's correct. An F sharp minor, either just a static F sharp minor chord or an F sharp minor song. Okay, and of course, if you have F sharp minor as your root, the Dorian tone is the major 6 there, right? Which is the D sharp. So you see, in our regular song, you're not really hearing the D sharp in that context. Against an F sharp minor chord, you're hearing the 6 there, and that's the Dorian sound. Right? You have to hear it against that F sharp to really make that come out. Otherwise, all you're playing is the major scale. Okay. How to get out of a bad note, a note not in the scale. Yeah, I just talked about that. A note not in the scale would that's what I was just saying. Like this note is not in the scale, right? But you could basically walk through that note to a good note, or you could bend from that note to another note. What about shapes? Shape 4 and 7. Okay. Okay, yeah. So the system for 5 major scale shapes to correlate with the 5 cage shapes and the 5 pentatonic shapes means that I'm leaving out 2 notes, 2 scale shapes, if you like, right, of the 7, because the E major scale, let's take E as that's what we've been talking about, is a 7-note scale. Now, here's the reason I do this. All right, so if you take shape 3, which starts on a G sharp, E, F sharp, G sharp, 3, right? And shape 4, if you were going to play a shape 4, would start on an A. Well, it's only a half step apart. So listen to how close they sound. Shape 3. Shape 4. They sound very similar, don't they? So to me, and same thing with shape 7, right? If you have the E major scale starting on shape 1, it would start, it would start a fret below. So that half step, to me, this, again, just my personal opinion, that half step is not enough of a reason to learn 2 more scale shapes and incorporate it. All it does is complicate things and make you have to learn more shapes than you need. You know, that's my opinion. Now, it's quite easy to adapt that to get to those 2 modal shapes if you're into playing modes, and that's another lesson. But so to me, you don't need them because the 5 shapes cover the entire fretboard. Shape 4 is inside shape 3. Shape 7 is inside shape 1. I realize this is a lot of numbers we're mentioning now, and it doesn't sound much like music. But as I demonstrated earlier, you know, when you put the track on and you just try to find a couple of notes inside any one of these shapes, it does sound like music, and it's really, really fun. You sort of can't go wrong, you know. Can you explain what you mean by above and below the scale? Yes. Let's take this E major 1 octave pattern, okay? 7th fret on the A string. E to E. E, F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. Luckily, it didn't go any higher because I didn't want to sing any higher than that for everyone's sake. So that is E to E, okay? Now, below that, there are also notes that belong to that scale, right? So that's below the scale. That's below this E, right? There are also notes, but it's still the same notes. We're just talking below the range of this. Just like above this E, F sharp, G sharp, I won't sing it, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. You could keep going, right? So, but the sort of meat of this is this major scale sitting right in the middle of the neck here. And that's the one I was saying earlier. I like to relate that to the major chord shape for a C cage shape, and also the notes of the chord, the chord tones, right? So all of that information is just sitting right in the middle of the neck there. But if I'm soloing and I want to extend the range of that a little bit, but I want to stay in the same position, right? So now I feel like I want to go up. So I went into this range here, above that 1 octave scale. Now let's say I want to go down. Right, so it allows me to go below this and above that, yeah, because I'm seeing the 1 octave, E to E, but I can also go below it and above it, all right? Hopefully that makes sense. Lower on the neck, below, higher pitch up the neck. Yeah, exactly. Same notes in the, you answered my question for me. Thank you, Mary. Yeah, same exact notes, you know. It's one of the most fun things about the scale is once you get it down, being able to move from shape to shape through the middle of the neck, you know, it changes the way you phrase. Like we get into, you know, even though this method starts with shapes, it's actually very liberating and breaks you out of shapes, ironically, because I tend to think of it like a piano. I'm just seeing the key, and so that way it helps you to go this way as well as across, you know, which really helps you find soaring melodies, you know, because a lot of this, trying to find a melody to go over a simple 4-chord song like this, is trying to find some sort of soaring vocal melody, you know, something that sounds melodic and isn't just, you know, just like, you know, my favorite rock lick from 1975. You know, it's trying to be able to say something musical with it, you know. Let me have a look here and see if anybody's, so let me know if you have another question here. Cage system, yeah. Okay. A couple of people are having trouble finding the PDFs. Hopefully they've found them now. There is a link on there for them with that. So the way to practice it is to basically take one shape at a time. Okay, see the one octave inside, and then expand the range of it, and then just make melodies over the track. Now, obviously, the backing track I'm giving you with this lesson is in the key of E major. It's a 1-6-2-5 progression in the key of E major. Once you've played over that, you know, then it's time to move to the next shape, do it again, next shape, do it again. Then you want to go to another key. Okay, so just think about the order of the shapes stay the same, the fingering of the shapes stay the same, and if you know your pentatonic scales, you know, you should look for that inside the major scale shape, because the more reference points you can find to what you already know, the easier it's going to be. You know, like, and it's great because if I was playing over this using pentatonic, it's going to have that sort of Allman Brothers. You know, it's kind of bluesy. Now let's add those 2 extra notes in. And even in this pentatonic position, the one everybody knows, right? Add those 2 extra notes in. See, here's one, here's the other one. And you can blend pentatonic with that. Go bluesy again. Go back to pentatonic. You know, so being able to switch back and forwards between, do I want it to be super melodic? Do I want it to you know, be more of a pentatonic blues, whether it's the major southern rock kind of sound, or whether it's the minor, you know, more traditional blues rock. You know, you can do both. That's the great thing about it, you know. But those 2 extra notes bring a lot to what you're playing. Let's see what another question here. I want to focus on playing individual notes of current on a jam track. Yeah, that's the next step. So, you know, what my new course, as I said again, let's get another plug in before the time runs out. You know, be a shame not to, really, wouldn't it? Melodic soloing, major scale, teaches you the 5 shapes in different keys against different jam tracks, and gives you lots of phrasing tips in order to actually make it sound like music. Once you've got through all of that, then the next step is to look at chord tones in the chords. Like if we took our jam here, E, C sharp minor, F sharp minor, B7, I would start with the thirds of the chords, because to me that's the most melodic chord tone, right? So over the E chord, that would be a G sharp. Over the C sharp, over the C sharp minor, that would be an E. Over the F sharp minor, that would be an A. And over the B7, that would be a D sharp. So if I just played those 4 notes over the track, you'll hear how they fit. It's really nice on that melody. And then, of course, the next step after that, after you've got the chord tones, the next step after that would be to then play arpeggios, you know, and then it's a whole nother thing. But it starts in that major scale. Everything starts with that major scale, not just the improvisation. The chords themselves start with that major scale. Okay. Now, I just got a couple of minutes left here. Just want to also say that TrueFire has recently launched a new private lessons application, and so you want to check that out. You could take private lessons with me. You could take private lessons with a whole bunch of great artists and teachers through TrueFire. And so the new individual private lessons are really interesting. Like, for example, you basically ask somebody a question about a song or a technique or something, and you get a lesson back in video form like that. And of course, that's kind of like a mini version of the TrueFire classrooms. I have one of those as well. Mine's called Guitar Babylon. If you want to check out my music or talk to me about lessons or ask questions about this lesson, my website is www.robgarland, like Judy, G-A-R-L-A-N-D, robgarland.net. Okay? I would have had .com, but it's a wedding photographer, so it's robgarland.net. You don't want me to take photos at your wedding. It would not go well. That's all I'm going to say about that. I want to say a big thank you to everybody for tuning in today and going through this with me. Like I say, the new course is available now. You can check out my other courses on there as well. How do you approach embellishments like bends or slides? I've got to get that in there because that's a good one. Basically, you know, I'm usually looking, the old Jeff Beck trick is half step below the note, right? So if I'm going to play this E right here on the 5th fret of the B string, a cool thing to do is to play that and then do a half step bend up to it. That's a great Jeff Beck trick. So there's, you know, half steps, just kind of like having it in your ear where you want to go. And sometimes you don't get there, but that's okay. Sometimes it's kind of, you have to just kind of quickly hear where it is you're heading to. And that can be interesting too, and, you know, and create its own kind of sound. Slides, again, you know, maybe don't slide from too far up. You know, if you're trying to play the 4th fret, maybe don't start from up here. You know, it could take you a while to get there. Just try to sort of target the area of the neck you're working in. So my practice tip for this is basically take your 5 shapes, practice them in different keys, think about rhythm, think about phrasing, try connecting the shapes, try it over different styles of music as well. You know, that in my course, there's different styles of jam tracks because that really helps you with your sense of rhythm and phrasing. You know, if you're always playing over the same, you know, if you're always playing over that, you're going to sort of get into a rut with the way you phrase. So try to play over different styles of music, different rhythms as well as different keys. Okay. And then one other thing about the 5 shapes method is, you know, it's going to take you a little while to get them under your fingers. So you have to be patient with it, you know. And if you just play through them once, looking at the PDF, that doesn't necessarily mean you're internalizing it. Try to think about what the notes are in the scale and then make music with it, make melodies with it. You know, against the track. And as far as you know, entry level for this course, even if you've just played the pentatonic a few times, I go through the scale really slowly in the course, so I think you'd be fine. You know, if you're a beginner, late beginner to intermediate, I think you'd be fine. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. So once again, thanks to TrueFire, thanks to all my friends down in St. Petersburg. Looking forward to coming down to see you again soon. Thanks a lot, everybody, for tuning in. We all really appreciate it. Check out the sales that are going on this week. Check out the other live lessons by the TrueFire instructors. And if you have any questions, shoot me an email at rob@robgarland.net. And I'll be happy to give you some more information about this lesson or my courses or anything else, really, except for wedding photography, which I know nothing about. Anyway, thanks a lot, everybody. Good to see you, and see you again soon. Cheers. Have a great day.